Welcome to the kitchen table where my family's love was measured in numbers, and I came up short. You'll understand when you're older, Rowan. That's what my mother said, sliding the folder across the granite like it was nothing. Like it wasn't the deed to 4 properties and a trust account with more zeros than I could count. My sister Wren sat across from me, not meeting my eyes, twisting the corner of a napkin into something small and tight. The date was March 14th, my father's 70th birthday. The dining room in Cedar Falls smelled like the pot roast my mother always made for occasions that mattered. Rosemary and burnt garlic and something underneath it, something like guilt. My hands went cold first. Then my face went hot. That's how shock works in a body. It doesn't pick one direction and stay there. So that's it, I said. $5 million. To her. And me. My father didn't look up from his plate. You've always been independent, Ro. You don't need us the way she does. I laughed. It came out wrong, more like a cough. 29 years old, and I was being told, over pot roast, that my independence was the reason I got nothing. As if surviving on my own had somehow disqualified me from being loved. I want to tell you what it feels like to sit at a table where everyone already knows the ending except you. It's not sadness, not at first. It's a specific kind of stillness, like the air before a storm decides which way it's going to break. The thing about patterns is you don't see them while you're inside them. You only see them backward, the way you only notice a staircase's shape once you've fallen down it. I started counting after that dinner. Not out of spite, or maybe a little out of spite, but because counting felt like the only thing I had control over. Wren's wedding. $60,000, paid in full, no discussion. My move across the country for a job I'd fought for, one my parents called a phase. Not a cent, not even a congratulations card that arrived on time. Wren's car, replaced twice in 4 years, both times because safety matters. My car, a decade old, rattling on the highway, mattered less, apparently, than her convenience. There was a summer, I must have been 22, when I asked my mother, carefully, gently, why Wren's tuition was covered outright while mine came with a spreadsheet of terms and interest rates disguised as keeping things fair. My mother's answer has stayed with me word for word. Wren needs the help. You've always figured things out. Needed. Deserved. Figured things out. These were the words that drew the line between us, and I didn't understand yet that the line wasn't about money. It was about who got to be fragile and who had to be fine. I remember the Thanksgiving when my Uncle Desmond, 3 drinks in, said something he probably regretted the next morning. Your dad always said Ro was built different. Built to handle things. At the time I thought it was a compliment. Later I understood it was a life sentence, quietly delivered across a turkey carcass. By the time I was standing in that dining room in Cedar Falls, watching my father not meet my eyes, the pattern wasn't a mystery anymore. It was just being said out loud for the first time. For years past, I built a life that didn't ask my parents' permission to exist, a small architecture firm in Portland, a rented house with a leaking roof I fixed myself, a handful of people who showed up for me in ways my family never had. I wasn't rich. I wasn't chasing rich. I was for the first time, steady. Then my father called in October, his voice doing that thing voices do when they're carrying something too heavy to hold casually. I need you to come home, he said. There's something about the estate. About Wren's portion. It's Rowan, it's complicated. Complicated turned out to mean this. The properties left to Wren weren't fully my father's to give. 2 of the 4 had been purchased using funds from a family trust that, according to the original paperwork drawn up by my grandfather, required equal distribution among all grandchildren once the surviving spouse passed. My father, executor by default, had quietly restructured the trust 8 years earlier, right around the time Wren got engaged, cutting me out entirely and never mentioning it. Not to me. Not, it seemed, entirely legally. I sat with the papers my father's lawyer had reluctantly sent over, 3 days after that phone call, in my kitchen in Portland with a cup of coffee going cold beside me. Every clause felt like a small, deliberate erasure. My grandfather's handwriting was still visible on the original 1987 document, the one that said equally, without exception, regardless of marital status or geographic distance. My father's revision, drafted by a different attorney entirely, replaced that language with something vaguer, something that could be interpreted however he wanted. I called Ren. I needed to know if she knew. I didn't ask questions, she said, quiet, careful. I didn't want to know the answer. That's the sentence that undid something in me. Not the money. The willful not knowing. The way people protect their own comfort by refusing to look directly at what's being taken from someone else. I didn't sleep that night. I kept rereading the phrase equally, without exception, until it stopped looking like words and started looking like a door I hadn't known was there. I flew back to Cedar Falls in November, unannounced, the trust documents in a manila folder on the passenger seat like a passenger of their own. My father opened the door already looking older than he had 4 years earlier, though it had only been 4 years. The house smelled the same, rosemary ghosts in the walls, but the light was different, thinner somehow. A late afternoon gray that made everything look like a photograph of itself. You should have called, he said. You should have told me the truth 8 years ago, I said back. We sat in the same dining room. My mother came in from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel, her face arranging itself into the practiced calm she used whenever conflict arrived uninvited. I put the folder on the table. I didn't raise my voice. I'd promised myself that, somewhere over Nebraska, at 35,000 feet, staring at clouds that looked like nothing and everything. Grandpa's trust says equal distribution, I said. You changed it in 2018. I have the original. I have your revision. I had a lawyer review both. My father's jaw tightened. You don't understand the family's finances the way I do. I understand a signature, I said. I understand a date. I understand that you took something that was never only yours to give, and you gave it to the daughter who needed you to still love her, and you let the other one go figure it out. My mother's hand went to her chest. That's not fair, Rowan. No, I said. It isn't. That's the point. There was a silence then, the kind that has weight, that presses down on a room like humidity before rain. My father looked at the folder like it might bite him. Ren, who I hadn't known was in the house, appeared in the doorway, still in her coat, like she'd just arrived and already regretted it. I'm not here to burn the house down, I told them. I'm here because I deserve to be told the truth, even 4 years late. I deserve the same accounting you gave Ren every single year of her life. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking you to finally see me. My father didn't apologize. Not that day. But something in his face shifted. Not surrender, exactly, more like the recognition of a debt he'd been pretending didn't exist. I'll have the lawyer review the original terms, he said finally. For words. It wasn't enough. It was at least honest. I left before dinner. I didn't stay to see if the pot roast came out the same. The legal process took 11 months. My share, when it finally came, wasn't life-changing in the way people imagine inheritance windfalls to be. After lawyers, after the slow bureaucracy of trust litigation, it was enough to pay off my mortgage and put a down payment on the kind of stability I'd been building by hand for years anyway. The number mattered less than I expected it to. What mattered more was smaller. My mother called in March, a year almost to the day since that birthday dinner, and for the first time didn't ask me to understand her side first. She asked how I was doing. Just that. It wasn't a reconciliation. It was a crack of light under a door that had been shut a long time. Ren and I talk sometimes now, carefully, like people relearning a language they used to be fluent in. She apologized once, in a parking lot outside a coffee shop, tears in her eyes that I believe were real. I told her I appreciated it. I didn't tell her it fixed anything, because it didn't, not entirely. Some things don't get fixed. They get carried differently. My father and I are polite. That's the honest word for it. Polite, not warm. I used to think that was a failure. Now I think it might just be the truth of where we are. And the truth is allowed to be unfinished. There's a moment I keep coming back to, months later, that has nothing to do with money at all. It was a Tuesday evening, ordinary in every way, and I was fixing a loose hinge on my back door. The same house with the leaking roof, still mine, still standing. My phone buzzed. It was a photo from Ren, her daughter, my niece, drawing a lopsided sun in yellow crayon. No caption. Just the photo. I stood there in my kitchen with a screwdriver in one hand and felt something settle in my chest that had been unsettled for 4 years. Not resolution. Not victory. Just quiet. I used to think the goal was to be chosen. To matter enough to my parents that the ledger would finally balance in my favor. I understand now that the ledger was never the point. Being figured out wasn't a compliment or a curse. It was simply true, and it turned out to be the thing that set me free, long before anyone handed me a folder or a check. If you've ever sat at a table and watched the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally do the math out loud instead. If you've ever been the child who was strong so someone else could be fragile, you know that the wound isn't really about what you were denied. It's about what you learned to give yourself instead. I still go back to Cedar Falls sometimes. The rosemary smell is still there. So is the thin gray light. But I walk in now as someone who doesn't need the room's approval to know her own worth. That's the part nobody tells you about vindication. It doesn't arrive as a number in an account. It arrives quietly, on an ordinary Tuesday, in a kitchen you built yourself.